A big part of that is the fact that the bass from the Sennheisers has a bit more punch and a bit more energy, and that helps to offset the treble and bring a bit of dynamics and fun to the sound of the Momentum 4s that the Sonys can't quite match. Hey folks, and welcome to another Passion for Sound audio review. Today we're taking a look at the Sennheiser Momentum 4 wireless headphones, and these have been much requested ever since my review of the Sony WH-1000XM5s. The Momentum 4s have a list price of $380, making them just a little bit more expensive than the Sonys, but when I went to do my research for this review, they were actually listed significantly cheaper than the Sonys at $290. So I don't know if that's an ongoing price or if it was a short-term sale. It wasn't listed clearly as a sale, so I'm not really sure on that one. But either way, they're definitely the direct competitor that many people are going to think of if you're looking for a wireless headphone from those two big consumer brands. Now, obviously, there are other options out there like Bose, for instance. I don't have those here to compare, but I will for this review absolutely compare the 1000XM5s from Sony and the Momentum 4s. So let's jump in and see which I prefer.
You say you only wanna be best friends. I just wanna be a damn girlfriend. What I gotta do to make you face the truth? You didn't act like a friend that night. Maybe that's why it felt so right. Do I really need to spell it out for you? Just admit so why you trying to hide your curiosity when I know you call my name out in your sleep? Tell me, friend, can't you see you're in love with me? It's obvious we are that perfect match, ain't no catch.
Straight off the bat, a few things to talk about in relation to the XM4 is that it's only got aptX HD, it doesn't offer LDAC. And I have to say that I think that's a bit of an oversight from Sennheiser. LDAC is clearly to me the better sounding codec whenever I put them side by side, and there was a chance there for Sennheiser to take these to an even better level of performance than what they currently hit. Now, whether or not that's better, we'll get to that soon. But do go into this knowing that if you're a fan of LDAC, if you look to buy devices that have LDAC, the Sennheisers don't have them. I would say to keep watching this though, because they do still sound excellent. Whether they're better than the Sonys, that's another question. But start off by knowing that these are slightly limited by their codec. Other than the codec question, these are also active noise cancelling as you'd expect on a headphone like this. They've also got some EQ functionality, but it's a little bit different from Sony's. It's kind of simpler in some ways, a little bit more kind of intelligent in other ways, and for me, I think overall, I actually like it just a little bit better. The Sennheisers, much like the Sonys, offer excellent battery life. These are quoted as 60 hours. I haven't tested that to its extreme, but I know that I've used them on and off constantly with very little charging, if any charging since I got them, and they're still going strong. The final thing worth mentioning before I give you a bit of a device tour and look at the accessories is that I think the touch controls on the Sennheisers are nothing short of exceptional. And the reason I say that is because, much like with the Sonys, you've got the very intuitive swipe up and swipe down for things like volume or forwards and backwards for skipping tracks, etc. But one thing I love about the Sennheisers is if you want to change the transparency mode where you can hear the outside world and reduce the amount of ANC going on, that being active noise cancelling, you can do that just by pinching to close off the rest of the world and just focus in on the music, or kind of unpinching, I guess you'd call it, to expand the sound out and bring in transparency mode. I really like that. You can have it a little bit on, a little bit off, whichever you want. You can graduate how much of the outside world you can hear at any point in time. Now, Sony's counter to that is they've got a smart active noise cancelling mode, and that's great, but I actually like having control over it because I don't expect a device like these to properly understand what I need at any point in time. The Sonys are great in the sense that if they can tell you're going for a walk and you're on the move, they'll give you a bit of extra environmental awareness. But they're not going to be clever enough to know that you're maybe sitting at a desk and need to hear what's going on around you. They're just going to see that you're sitting stationary and they're going to turn on active noise cancelling like you're on a train or a plane, etc. There might be a little bit more nuance than that, but they're not really smart enough to properly give me everything I always want from them, and that's where personally I'd just rather do it myself for the Sennheisers. And so with those key features out of the way, let's talk about the design of the Sennheiser Momentum 4. The first thing I'll say is I think they're a lovely looking headphone. They also feel great in the hand. I think they feel better than the Sonys. And in fact, I'm going to pick up the Sonys now. And obviously they're in different colours, but I just think the Sonys feel lighter and flimsier in a way. They've got this soft touch plastic that is actually a bit of a fingerprint magnet. It shows up smudges really easily. And so I do find myself preferring the much kind of, I think, classier and higher quality look of the Momentum 4s. Instead of the soft touch plastic, these have just got kind of a hard finished matte plastic, not hard in the sense that it's bad to touch, just that it's not trying to be soft touch. It's just a very smooth, kind of matte or even satin finished plastic, and I think it feels great. I also really like the flatter style headband. It's a bit broader on top of the head. I think potentially it's going to be more comfortable for some people. I've found both of these headphones to be equally comfortable in terms of the headband. I do find that for me, the Sennheisers feel a little bit heavier, so that might play into it for some people. The narrower headband on the Sonys is offset a bit by a slightly lighter feeling headphone. And then the other thing I should mention is that I think both headphones have excellent pads. The Sennheisers have a slightly flatter, kind of broader face on the actual pad, whereas the Sonys have got a narrower face on the pad. So it doesn't make a huge difference to me. The Sonys are also a little bit more rounded there. I feel like the Sennheisers seal more on the head, whereas these kind of just rest against the head. And that's both good and bad. I think it probably means that you're getting maybe a little bit more passive isolation, meaning not using active noise cancelling, but just isolating the world by sealing a closed cup over your ears. I think maybe the Sennheisers do that a bit better. But it's also got a drawback where sometimes, depending on the position I'm in, if I've been laying in bed listening to an audiobook and I move my head, it's like the cup from the Sennheiser actually makes a proper seal over my ear and almost creates a vacuum when I move a certain way. And that can actually affect your ability to hear the sound coming through them. So it's like it's damping or muting the sound slightly because it's creating this pressure inside the ear cavity. And so I don't think either headphone is perfect, but I also don't have any real issues with either of them. They've both got little things that aren't quite right, but nothing that's a deal breaker. And for me personally, I do find myself reaching more often for the Sennheisers, and that's in no small part due to the fact that I just enjoy interacting with them more. While we're doing device tours, the other thing I should mention is that on the Sennheisers, just like on the Sonys, you've got USB-C charging. You've got on the Sennheisers just a single button that's going to allow you to turn them on, do pairing mode, things like that. And something that I find quite cool about the Sennheisers is that when you've had them resting flat in the case or even on a desk, when you pick them up, they actually switch on. They recognise that you've lifted them up to listen to them and they switch themselves on. And that to me is a great smart feature. It's very rare that I'm going to lift these up and not be using them, unlike the smart features in the Sonys, like the talk to chat, which I find is sometimes a bit annoying how it switches on and off when it thinks I'm talking, sometimes when somebody else has spoken. This is a smart feature in the Sennheisers that I think is excellent and very useful. Now, no doubt there will be times you pick them up to move them, they switch on, they drain a bit of battery, but with the massive battery life these have, I don't think it's a big issue. And so while we're talking about things like taking them out of the case, let's have a quick look at the case. If we're talking about the light coloured model that I've got here, the case is this lovely kind of woven, sort of brownish mottled type look. On the inside of the case, we've got it all very nicely organised. USB charging cable, flight adapter, a line-in cable for an auxiliary feed, for instance, if you want to use these wired. And so everything's just kind of how it should be. It's a nice case. I actually prefer it slightly to the Sony case, only because when you go to put the headphones in and out of the Sony case, it's got this moulding here to protect the headphones, and that's lovely. It does keep them well protected. But what it also does is it means it folds over a little bit sometimes, and you've kind of got to wedge the headphones in the right way to prevent that from folding over and getting caught under the headphones and stopping them going in properly. I do like the fact that Sony built in this kind of little flappy pouch here to hold all the bits and pieces in, but I don't think that's enough to make up for the slightly annoying moulded piece here that does get in the way. And so in terms of accessories, fit, feel, build quality, etc., I'm going to give the nod to the Sennheisers. Not because I think the Sonys are bad in that regard, I just think the Sennheisers are better. But that of course brings us to how well these perform. And the first question I had when I was looking at these, because a number of you have asked me for this in the past, is how well each would work with the microphone. If you're taking calls, if you're doing video conferencing with these, you're going to want to know how the microphone sounds. So let me play you a quick test now. I've got some sample audio from the microphone in my phone, followed up by the sound from the Sennheisers and the Sonys. I'll put on screen which one's which so you know. This is a test of the sound quality using the phone microphone. This is just a baseline so you can understand how the Momentum 4 and how the Sony sound as a comparison to just the phone. This is a test of the microphone from the Sony WH-1000XM5s. They've also ticked into the chat to talk mode so I can actually hear what's going on now. That's kind of nice. And there's no major background noise in the room that I'm talking in, so this is really just about the voice quality. This is a test of the sound from the microphone on the Sennheiser Momentum 4. There's basically no background noise, so it's really just about the quality of the microphone picking up the voice. Now to me, neither of those was different enough from the other that I would make my decision based on mic quality, but let me know in the comments down below if you found one better or worse. Maybe if you used one of these and it's performed well or not so well, let me know in the comments down below. But for now, let's get onto the sound quality from the Sennheiser Momentum 4, and then we'll compare it with the Sony WH-1000XM5. If you're trying to work out what piece of gear you should buy next, then the Passion for Sounds Recommends database might be helpful for you. In the description box of every single video, just down here, you'll find the Passion for Sounds Recommends section. If you click on this link, it'll take you through to the Passion for Sounds Recommends Airtable database. What you'll see in here is every single product that I've ever reviewed and recommend, in some cases products that I own but maybe haven't reviewed but recommend. And then once you're in here, you can use the filter button up here to decide to filter by things like whether or not the product type is for a headphone, for example. So maybe you're looking for a headphone. Filter it by that and you can now see every headphone I recommend. You can sort it by price, which is the default sorting, or any other sorting method that you want. And then once you've got the list of products you're looking for, you've got the links to the reviews of the products, and then also purchasing links for global retailers and also regional retailers for the US, Australia, Canada, and the UK. So feel free to play around with this, sort it, filter it however you want to. It won't affect what anybody else sees, and you can hopefully find just the right products for you. I hope this is helpful, and now let's get back to the review. The most obvious thing for me with the Momentum 4s in their sound quality is just how good their bass is. They've got a wonderful sense of bass extension, but it's controlled, it's tight, it's punchy. And so what that means is they have a lovely sense of bass impact without giving too much of a sense of boosting or bloating the bass at all. The soundstage they present has a nice sense of space in it generally. They're overall a very enjoyable sounding headphone. And I think a big part of that is that they're tonally quite well balanced. They've got their little bits of emphasis here and there, but I don't feel like anything is being pushed too far forward or too far back in the mix. And as part of that, the vocals are generally well presented, they're present, they're focused, they've got a good sense of body, good sense of volume in the mix, they're not recessed or overly forward or shouty. And likewise, the treble has a good sense of detail. They're not a super extended or sparkly sounding headphone, but I think for a portable, wireless type headphone, they're just right on the treble detail. And so with all that said, let's jump into a comparison because most people, I think, are going to be looking at these in the context of other headphones like the Sony WH-1000XM5s. So let's see how they compare on the same track against one another. Now for this test, I'd already set up the EQ on the Sonys to maximize their performance to my taste. This is based on the settings that I shared in my review of the 1000XM5s. And I left the Momentum 4s in their stock setting. But this is probably a good moment to just quickly mention the EQ setup on the Momentum 4s. It's a much more simple EQ in some ways, but also better for me. And the reason for that is that they give you a simple 3-band graphic equalizer, just bass, mid and treble. It's almost like tone controls really. They do also have a bass boost function, which is a switch on. It doesn't tell you what frequencies it's working on. And then something else that I love about it is they've actually got a smart app. And what that app does is it allows you to play whatever music you want to, so you get to hear music you're familiar with. And then it cycles through a few different settings of different EQ options and lets you choose A, B or C, which you prefer. So for the first round, it gives you 3 options, second round, another 3 options, so on and so forth. And at the end of it, it produces an EQ curve that it thinks is what you're going to like the most. Ultimately, all it's doing is choosing bass, mid and treble settings on the inbuilt EQ, but I like the fact that it takes the guesswork out of it. It keeps it simple, it keeps it accessible. On the other hand, the Sonys provide a bit more of a detailed EQ system, but the result of that is actually one that I find a little bit hard to work with because it cuts off at 400 Hz, you don't have any control over the bass separately, and so in some ways it might as well have been as simple as a Momentum 4. Now no doubt each of you will have your own preferences as to which approach you prefer, but for me, I quite like how the Sennheisers did it, and a part of that is actually the fact that I don't really feel like they need much EQing. I think out of the box, these are a better sounding headphone than the XM5s, but let's see what some tweaking of the XM5s can do to level the playing field. And the other thing to keep in mind here is that I'm listening to the Sonys using the LDAC codec, and I'm using the Sennheisers with their maximum but lesser quality aptX HD codec. Listening to Steamroller by James Taylor, and the Momentum 4s come out sounding great to start with. The vocals are clean, they're well separated, they're nicely present in the mix. The guitar has a decent sense of articulation, but it's a fairly smooth presentation overall. And whilst nothing jumps out at me listening to this as really hi-fi sound, there's also nothing lacking. I didn't feel like it was muted or muffled in such a way that the 1000XM5s did out of the box, that being the Sonys. I felt like without any tweaking, the 1000XM5s just sounded a bit muted and a bit flat, a bit lacking in dynamics. and I don't find that with the Sennheisers at all. As I said, they're not the most hi-fi sound, they're not going to compete with a lovely set of wired headphones from a high-quality portable device, but for the convenience of wireless and active noise cancelling, I think they're very, very enjoyable. Moving over to the XM5s, and there the vocal was just a bit thinner than what I heard from the Sennheisers. As a part of that, the guitar started to sound just a little bit disembodied. So rather than having the presence and weight and smoothness of the Sennheisers, we got maybe a little bit more texture, a little bit more clarity from the Sonys, but we were losing out on some of the body. There is treble from the Sennheisers, but there's less sense of air or sparkle. Again, it's that slightly muted presentation, and that I think is where the Sonys are going to be a lesser choice for some people, but also preferable for others. The Sonys have a very polite delivery, while the Sennheisers are a bit more dynamic and a bit more exciting. They don't ever get to the heights, as I said, of a wired headphone, but I actually think the Sennheisers get closer even after you EQ the Sonys. As this track rolls on and the full band kicks in, the Sennheisers do get a little bit more treble focused, or not treble focused, but you hear what the treble is like more from the Sennheisers, and it is a little bit more bitey. Remembering this is with no EQ applied, so you can always pull it back a little bit if you want to. And so whilst the treble from the M4s does get just a little bit forward from me, I still prefer it over the XM5s because it's not as polite and lacking in energy. There's a bit more dynamics to it. As I said, you could always pull back the treble just a little bit if you want to, and it's by no means bad. A big part of that is the fact that the bass from the Sennheisers has a bit more punch and a bit more energy, and that helps to offset the treble and bring a bit of dynamics and fun to the sound of the Momentum 4s that the Sonys can't quite match. And that helps to bring a bit of punch and energy to the sound of the Momentum 4s and make them more engaging and fun than what I ever heard from the Sonys. And in fact, as this busier part of the track went on and I jumped back and forth between the Sonys and the Sennheisers, I actually feel like despite the lower quality codec, the Sennheisers sound like the better quality headphone. It's not to say that the Sonys are bad, and whilst I've had both of these here, I've kind of reached early on probably equally for both because sound quality wise, I think they're interchangeable. They've both got different strengths. The thing that actually tipped me over the head to choose the Sennheisers more often lately has been more about the build quality and that lovely interface of the touch panel. And so for me, I think sound quality goes to the Sennheisers pretty cleanly for me. The Sonys aren't bad in that respect, but I think the Sennheisers are better. I think comfort could be a toss-up. You've got the wider headband here, but you've got that little bit of suction on the Sennheisers versus a lighter weight headphone on the Sonys. And then for me, I think noise cancelling, based on my usage and my testing, is pretty much on par. And so if it were me buying, I think the Sennheisers would be my first choice, particularly if they're at the cheaper price that they were when I did my research for this review. But we've ultimately here got two headphones that are both excellent. If you've already got one, don't feel like you need to get the other one. They're not that far apart. If you are in the market and you're not sure which one to choose, I think I would choose the Sennheiser. I would err you towards the Sennheiser. But if for some reason you want to buy the Sonys more, if that's the one that your heart wants, if you like the brand better, if you like the look of them better, if you think the lightness of them's better, then absolutely buy them. You're not going to go too far wrong. And so as always, I hope you found this video useful, helpful, informative, etc. Also, as always, if you're interested in picking up the Momentum 4s, I put links down below where you can go through and buy them. I'm pretty sure they're all going to be Amazon links, so jump through, grab them if you want to. Thanks for supporting the channel because they probably are affiliate links. And if you have found the video useful and helpful, I'd love it as always if you'd hit the like button and consider subscribing and ringing the notification bell if you haven't already. But for now, let me leave it to the music, so happy listening and I'll see you here next time on Passion for Sound.